Lita and I met through the American Red Cross sailing program on Lake Phelan. And then after this voyage ended in July 1 of 2019, I gave my first presentation at a YMCA camp in October of that year. So you are getting the creme de la creme of this, because I've done this now since 2019, and I've added valuable pieces of information that other audiences have requested. So I hope that you enjoy this. So we will begin. Here is the Picton Castle, which started life as a fishing trawler in Norway in 1928, actually in England in 1928. It was converted into this three-masted barque by Captain Daniel Moreland in 1996, and I sailed on its 7th world voyage between May 1 of 2018 and June 1 of 2019. We begin this voyage, in this particular instance, in New Orleans instead of Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, which is its normal port, because they sailed in the Gulf of Mexico for approximately a month, going to tall ship festivals in April of 2018. You sign on. Here is Captain Moreland, guy in the gray beard here, and here's his first mate, Aaron, and here's one of the trainees, and we're signing into the logbook. And there are 2 rules on this voyage. Number 1 is respect the ship. Take care of it. And also be careful, because you can get seriously injured or killed if you do something wrong. So that's why we're trainees, and he's got professional crew teaching us. The other rule, which is extremely important as well, is respect each other. You've got to get along, because you can't go hide, in a sense. There are no secrets on a vessel, and it's in everybody's interest to treat each other with respect. And there was only one incident where that did not happen, and we'll get to that later on. Okay, so now we're provisioning the ship for the first chunk of our voyage here. We're going down to Panama. So we've got a lot of stuff we're putting up on deck, and then we're going down below and putting it in the main salon here, which sleeps up to 18 people. And then behind me, where I took this photo, is the hold. But this is what it looks like when all that stuff is put in its proper place. So everybody's got a bunk built into the ship here with privacy curtains. That is your private space. You never enter it unless you are given permission by the owner of that space. These chests are basically medical supplies. And then we have a library here, a charging station, etc. So this is my bunk, number 42, my air conditioning, and then family photos. And this was my home for 400, well, not every night, because it was a 402-day voyage, but roughly 3/4 of the time. So here's that map I'm talking about. So our first section of our voyage here is sailing through the Gulf of Mexico into the Caribbean, into Panama. And the most important crew member, of course, on the ship is the cook. This is Donald. He's from Grenada. He would cook every meal except Wednesday night and all day Sunday, and then crew members did those. And this is an unusual meal because, we just left port, so we've got fresh crawfish, etc. But, we've got some awesome peanut butter on this vessel, too, among other things. So it was a wide range. We had 900 eggs initially that we are greasing with Vaseline so that they can be stowed and stored in a non-refrigerated space. And that works out really well as long as they don't break. That happened one time. But we are beginning our training in port. In this particular instance, this video is at sea, but we're going aloft, coming up over the futtocks here onto this platform. And if you can do that, that's your first sign that you can go aloft, because you've got to be able to do that to get the next set of ratlins to go up higher, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a little example of that. But we have 205 lines on this ship, and we used most of them. Some sparingly, so you maybe have forgotten what that line did. And consequently, 9 times out of 10, you know it because there's a pattern to it. And I won't go into the details of that because every sail basically has the same set of lines. Some have more or less because they're based on size. And then they're bunched together per sail. So a steel pin like this one is going to be a halyard. Everything else is going to be wooden because this one really has to be strong and you do not want that to break. So here's my friend Tad from Seattle up on the Royal. Actually, he's on the Topgallant yard. And he's standing on a steel rope called a foot rope. And then he's got a climbing harness on, so he's clipped in to the back rope here. When these voyages began in the late 1990s, they were not wearing climbing harnesses. I've been on other ships as well. Did anybody know Jeff Pope by any chance, who had the ship called the Sheila Yates? He was from here.
I've been on that boat.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Well, that was my first tall ship in 1998-99.
Yeah.
Or 1988-89, excuse me. And his rule was just don't fall. And that's basically it. You have to be careful aloft because things can go really bad in a hurry. And we were. Here I am on the foremast over here, and we are setting this sail. We've got the head sails up here, but from the top of this mast is 100 feet to the deck. So there's only 2 people that need to go up to the Royal, 4 people on the Topgallant, 5 people, well, again, 4 on the upper topsail. It's nice to have 6 on the lower topsail, and you definitely want to have 6 on the course or the main. So we all got good at going aloft. There were only 2 people in the entire voyage that did not. One got injured when he was going up, and the other one was just too old. The cutoff for age was 70, and this guy was 70 years of age. And he says, no, I just can't do it, so I'm not going to put myself at risk to try to do that. But then you have to know what your lines are on deck because you're going to be counted on to do things when we're up aloft. So here's a view from where I was, essentially. Actually, this is on the lower topsail, looking down. And this is the foot of the upper topsail sail. Normally, you're not up here when we're sailing. Every now and then you are. But usually once the sails are set, you're on deck and everything is good, unless you had to go up, obviously, to bring in sail. All these folks are heaving on braces, and I'm going to be, here's the mast, here's one half of the yard. At the end of it is a line called the brace, and when it's pulled, the yard rotates on the mast so that you can trim it like you would with fore and aft sails. So all the sails essentially are the same angle, similarly to your fore and aft sloops, etc., that are working together as individual wings to pull the ship forward or to push the ship forward. So that's what these folks are doing. And we got really good at coiling line because those braces and other lines that can be quite big and quite heavy, and you always want to take them off the deck once you're done using them. This is our first port of call, Portobello in Panama. And here's our first swim call. I don't know who took this photograph, but it's worthy of being in National Geographic because the timing was perfect. And then one of the land excursions in this case was taking a hike with a guide up here. And then we had our cameras and lunches and stuff on horseback because we were fording this stream 5 or 6 times to go up to this lovely waterfall. And had a great lunch and a little swim here. And as soon as we got done, it poured heavily because the Panama Canal is dependent upon rain, fresh water every day, because it's all flowing out into the ocean as it goes through the locks. So I don't have any photos of the return trip because after that rain, that stream that you saw that we crossed before now had gone up about 6 to 8 inches. So then we hooked our arms together and walked really carefully downstream and made sure you didn't slip and fall because you could get swept away, and that would not be good. So now we're entering the Panama Canal, and there are 3 locks going up and 3 going down with Lake Gatun in the middle, where all the fresh water comes from. So we're following this ship here, and then these mules, which is what they were back in the day when this lock opened in 1915, they're now electric train engines, are attached to each vessel, fore and aft at the bow and the stern, to keep them straight as they are proceeding through the lock. And then the gates open and you go up another 80 feet or so. So, or actually it's a total of 83 feet in 3 sections. That's what it is. And then Lake Gatun is very long, so it takes an entire day to go from one ocean to another. So here's Panama, and we had shore leave there. Here's Tad again, you saw in the previous slide, and his wife Valerie, doing touristy things. So we have to move on here because there are 26 ports of call, and I've only got a little bit of time. So our next stop is the Galapagos. And we were really looking forward to this. We crossed the equator, so here's King Neptune and his lovely bride over here, and his court. Davy Jones is over here. And I was a polywog, and now I'm a shellback. So our first greeters to the Galapagos were these red-footed boobies, and they would come by, stay on our rigging, sleep on the rigging, get up, flap their wings, and poop, of course, before they left. So the 4 to 8 watch was not real happy about that because they had to clean up that you-know-what. So here is Wreck Bay on San Cristobal Island in the Galapagos. Now we were warned by the captain we may not be able to go ashore because every ship's hull is inspected for non-native species of barnacles. And there are 2 divers that do that. Well, in this particular instance, and one of them never passed the vessel. Well, the other guy would say, well, no, you're getting a little too picky here. But he warned us about that we may not be able to go ashore because this was now the 7th time we were doing this. We cleaned this hull as best we could at sea. But when he spoke to the harbor master here, the harbor master said, I'm sorry, Captain Moreland, I can't let you go ashore. Why? Right behind me is every port manager in the chain of the Galapagos Islands. If I let you clean your ship, which would cost us 35 grand, I've set a precedent, and they're going to be really pissed at me. So we don't call this Galapagos, we call it Galapagos. This is our party that night. We were allowed to stay overnight and then leave basically at dawn. So that's on my bucket list for another time. So moving on, now we've got a long leg relatively here to Pitcairn Island. And in the meantime, while we're at sea, of course, we're learning the ways of the ship. And one of them is sewing on canvas. So our friend here is making a ditty bag, which you would put tools in, and when you go aloft, you attach it to yourself. Some people would have a harness, a longer handle, so they could sling it over their shoulder. So that everything has got to be contained. You don't want anything, especially aloft, to drop. Somebody below could get hurt. So we all made ditty bags. We also learned celestial navigation on this portion of the voyage. So here's our Nordic friend, Sven, or Lars actually is his name, who was one of the professional crew. And he's sighting the noon sighting. And we are learning all of this stuff, which I've totally forgotten now. You have to practice this every day to get good at it. But you take a sighting and you calculate where you are in the world in this case, and you then compare it to what the electronic GPS device is telling you where you are. And needless to say, you are humbled very quickly because you're off by like 60 nautical miles or something like that. So here's our first sighting of Pitcairn, where the Bounty mutineers ended up. And the port is taking this longboat in. And then when you get there, you make a screaming left turn into this. And you've got to put a line on that bollard right there to stop the boat. Otherwise, bad things happen. But you can see how rough this is. There's only a supply ship that comes in 4 times a year, every 3 months. So they are truly isolated in a sense. And Leslie Jacques is my good friend. He was the governor of Pitcairn Island at the end of his diplomatic career. He lives in the North Island of New Zealand, but he spends half the year here. And Tad is the other guy that you saw. This is Ted. And here I am. And we stayed with him a total of 4 nights and had a lovely time. Then we would have a banquet. Half the ship would be ashore at a time, and then staying with families on the island because there are no hotels on Pitcairn. So we did a haka led by Vi, who is from Tonga. And they then sang to us. So this is the youngest person on the island. Her name is Izzy. She's 5 years old, same age as my grandniece, who was 5 at the time. And her sister over here, and then a friend. So these are the only children on the island. Once you reach high school age, you go to New Zealand and go to school there and board there. And many of them never come back because the opportunities for an economic livelihood on this island are limited. And consequently, this island will finally, at some point, according to Leslie, be depopulated because of the difficulty. You know, it's subsistence living. You're fishing and growing food in your garden plot. The import of honey is huge. Stamps used to be the biggest thing, but honey is keeping that economy going. But a box of cereal is 17 New Zealand dollars. So it's not an easy place to live, but it's a lovely spot, and I hope it has a long life. But I'm just telling you what he told me. Now we're weighing anchor. This is a 40-minute process, typically, because one link of the chain is going up on a stroke down and up. So it's a lot of work. But that's why you have 5 people on both ends of that rod. So moving on, now we're going to Gambier in the French Polynesia right here. And this is looking at our ship down below. Lovely view from here. Black pearls are their export. And we took one of our, we have several boats. You know, there's the ship and then there are ship's boats. So Lars, who you saw doing the sextant reading, we are flying the flag of Norway because he is Norwegian. And then we have another skiff here under sail, and we go camping. And Dayan, our engineer, is making meat shish kebab here with breadfruit from Pitcairn. Now, if you recall, breadfruit was the whole purpose of the Bounty's voyage. This tastes like potatoes. It cooks like potatoes. So I understand why they thought it would be a good food source, but it only has a season. And then we move on to Rarotonga, which is the capital island of the Cook Islands. And this is now the touristy part. And you pay 120 New Zealand dollars to have a banquet and watch these people perform. So this was, a lot of New Zealanders come here to vacation. So you're going to see a wide range of tourism activities on this voyage. And this is just one example. The other thing that the captain said, when you're here, you should get your a tattoo, which Mr. T is more than happy to provide. He is excellent. Every tattoo is individual to that person. He doesn't use a catalog. So he asked me, well, what's your story? And he says, well, I'm very grateful for my family and my friends supporting me through life as a child, and now I'm doing this awesome adventure. And I'm meeting all these wonderful people, and I'm learning something new every day. Well, there's the tattoo. My parents and siblings, my friends, sailing on the ocean, and learning, which is the birds and the shark's teeth, learning something new every day until I die, and that's the sunset. So that's on my left calf. And that's why these are so meaningful, because they are unique to you. We then go on to Palmerston Atoll. Our ship is here, and I'm 4 feet above sea level, and this atoll is surrounded by coral, and that's what's protecting it from big waves. But all the structures are literally tied to the ground with really thick hawser-type ropes and steel bars. There were 37 people living on the atoll when I was there. And they had, of those, 15 of them were children. And they go then 300 nautical miles back to Rarotonga to go to high school. There's an elementary school here. And the gentleman that I stayed with, he had 9 children. And his wife lived in Rarotonga and took care of the older kids, and he took care of the younger kids. And he also ran the diesel engine for the generator for electricity. Well, they put in solar panels, so now he's just fishing. And he's selling his fish to restaurants and the cooks in Rarotonga. And kids everywhere like s'mores. So every night we would gather around a fire and have a beverage of a variety of alcoholic content or not. And the kids would roast marshmallows. Moving on from Palmerston, now we're going to Tonga and the Vavaua group of islands. And we are having a lovely ceremony. Here's Vi, who was a sail trainee, and she's been on this ship for 5 years. She hasn't been back. This is her homecoming. This is her grandma, Betty. And this is Captain Moreland. So this is a really special moment for everybody. This is this captain's son, Dawson, on his 6th birthday. He was the ship's boy. He's been at sea more than he's been on land. He's now 14. We're going to be 14 in August. Moving on to Fiji, which is at the end of the map here, but on the way, we are catching a yellowfin tuna. We had lines strung out the stern. Here is Runa from Norway and Colin, who now lives in Portugal. He was living in Canada with his bride. And we caught this yellowfin tuna, and it weighs 94 pounds. So to give you a sense of scale, here's Dawson. And we had several meals out of that fish. Moving on then to Vanuatu, island nation, where we stopped at 3 locations. And I'm sorry that that's out of, this next slide is, well, we're still on the ship, but Runa and this woman here named Lily are now married and have a son and a daughter, and they live in Yellowknife, Canada. Every voyage typically has 1 relationship or more. And so we're Facebook friends, and they're doing great. So now we are in Fiji. So we're laying over here, picking the ship out of the water and repainting the hull in 72 hours. So, and this is the cheapest place to do it in the world, which is why it's done here.
Where's that?
Pardon?
Fiji?
This is Fiji, yeah. In Suva, Fiji, specifically. The major city in town. But getting back to Vanuatu, So we visited 2 tribes. This tribe had more clothing on. The other one, the men wore penis sheets. I don't need to say anything more. So that's why it's in the show and the other one isn't. But they also had a lovely banquet there. So here is now the map. I don't know how these got out of order because they were in order when I put this thing together. Anyway, you have a sense of where we are, and that was the island that we're on. We started here. And moving on then, after the dance, we had this lovely pig roast, as you can see, with breadfruit, rice, and other goodies. And we also brought school supplies from Canada because this voyage is basically the same route. And we're bringing supplies to places where people need them. So this needs no introduction. And let's see if I can get that out of the way and stop this. There we go. Okay, their teacher, or the principal of the school, is unfortunately behind this girl. Her husband is Justin. This is Charity. We had a lovely conversation. They have college degrees. He's the chief of the tribe. And they have a one-room schoolhouse that's got a thatched roof and bamboo poles, and these people live a subsistence lifestyle. Money means nothing to them because they're trading. So we traded clothing. We got vegetables and other things from them. I got a conch shell for a t-shirt. When people ask me which place did I like the best, that's most memorable, it's Vanuatu. Because they're living the simple life, and these people are happy. They're not consumed by all the other stuff. They do have cell phones. There's little solar panel things on poles so that they can communicate to each other on the other islands. But that's their culture. And that was the other aspect of this. We're not doing touristy stuff here. We're living real life with real people in their culture. So moving on then, we're going into the Coral Sea here through the Straits of Torres at night in the channel, and then continuing on to Denpasar, Bali. And on the way, actually after we left here, we celebrated Christmas. Again, and New Year's, but for whatever reason, this is not in the sequence I was hoping, but you got to go on. The show has to go on. So this is a group shot. Here I am. So we celebrated Christmas after Bali. But here's Bali. The carving is just amazing, among other things, as well as the music. Our guide has been escorting crew from the Picton Castle for all 8 voyages. And so he's got this rock art in the courtyard of his home. But after, here's a shot of the ship at sea with our stunsails out for light wind. And that occurred after Christmas on the Indian Ocean. And here's a little video of what's that like. Well, again, but this is the ukulele orchestra of the ship. This guy, Tyler Lancaster, his father was lead guitarist for Gordon Lightfoot. This guy can play. Brittany is a captain of a research vessel now. Anders is a captain of a tall ship. And he's now with the Canadian Coast Guard. So everybody, here's now the video. So we're able to, put a skiff down with an outboard engine and take video of the ship underway, which was really cool. And then I also took a side trip to watch the sunrise over Mount Batur. So now moving from Denpasar, we go to Christmas Island, and the only reason why we did not was to celebrate Christmas. But one of our crew members woke up and he couldn't see well out of one of his eyes. His name is Mark Sampson. He used to live in Inver Grove Heights. He now lives in Panama with his wife. And he went to the medical officer and he said, I can't see well. And she said, well, has this happened before? He said, yeah. Well, what was that about? Well, I had a detached retina. Oh. So she runs up to the quarterdeck and tells the captain, Mark's got a detached retina, 99% sure. Okay, take in all sail, turn on the engine and go 100 nautical miles north. And we got there as soon as we could. I packed his bag and literally handed it to him as when he went off onto a tender, because we just stopped. We didn't set any hook. And he got on a flight, and that saved his sight, because he needed to have surgery within a period of time. And he's doing well. We met him again in Cape Town. So that was the only, well, we had some other medical stuff too, but that was the scariest by far. So now we go from Christmas a long way across the Indian Ocean to the island of Rodriguez in the Mauritius. And they have, well, on the way, we're doing ship's work. So here's our ship's carpenter. This is our quartermaster from New Zealand. And people are doing a variety of projects here. And we are also replacing decking in the decks. We've got, obviously, equipment to do that. So the ship is always under maintenance, especially at sea, but even in port, because there's certain things that you can do much better when you're standing still. So we work basically 8 hours every day, 8 to 12 and 12 to 4 on ship maintenance. And here I am busting rust on the windlass. And there was a lot of rust, but you just have to keep at it. And as I said, the crew would cook on Sundays. And every meal was great, but there was one meal that was late. And that's not good. And unfortunately, the crew that was cooking, they felt really bad, but we said, you did your best. And that's all we can ask. But we have 2 Viking ranges here that have a gas propane tank right here, right next to the smoker's bench. This ship is going to be 98 years old later this year, and it can only be registered in the Cook Islands because normally ships do not have a 98-year life. They have a 25-year life. So this is our galley, and there's a big sink back here. But cleaning the ovens and stuff was done then on the 8 to 12 watch, and I was part of that, in the evening. So there's Rodriguez, and then we go on to Reunion. Actually, we're going to stop in Rodriguez here because they have their own tortoises, and we didn't get to see them in the Galapagos. So these are Seychelles Island tortoises. And quite friendly and pretty darn cute, especially the little ones. And then on to the island of Reunion, which has a 9,000-foot elevation because of volcanoes. So this is unbelievable compared to some of the other, from the scenery standpoint, but because of that volcano island, you've got these awesome mountains. And it's a French protectorate place, so the food is amazing. But moving on then, we've got to sail down to Cape Town. And now you've got the Atlantic coming this direction and the Pacific coming this direction. So it got a little bumpy here. But it was fine. And here is now Table Mountain with the tablecloth being set upon it. These clouds as we are approaching. It's pretty spectacular. And once you get ashore, you can get on a cable car to go up to the top, and here is the view. And our ship is over here. So Cape Town is a very obviously large city with a huge economic disparity because of apartheid, even though that's over with. So you still got townships outside of the city center, et cetera, the huge economic gap. Cape of Good Hope, of course, we rounded to get to that, so then those of us who had shore leave, we would take an opportunity. But they have penguins. So I know they sounded like burros until now. And then moving on from Cape Town, we go to Lüderitz, which was a German, Namibia, but settled by Germans later on. But on the way, we're having this lovely weather. So here's another shipmate at the wheel. And we, sailing along in a great sailing conditions. So this is what it's like when the weather is great and you're at wind off the quarter. And we had a lot of really good weather. And there's Brittany studying because she's going to be a captain someday. So now here is the city of Lüderitz. And this part of Namibia is known for diamond mining. So you've got these abandoned mansions where the elite Germans were living in this. And then you've got this. This is the housing for the black folk who literally crawled on their bellies and picked diamonds off the ground. And then they were processed when they were doing other mining in another thing here. But that may show up in the next slide. So anyway, moving on to St. Helena. This is Jacob's Ladder. It's 699 feet from where I'm standing down to the ground because it's every step. And this was where Napoleon Bonaparte spent the last portion of his life imprisoned here in the Longwood House. His body was reinterred into France later, but that's what it's known for. This is the governor's house. And here's Jonathan, the oldest turtle or tortoise in the world. And he was 170 some years old when I took this video. And he's still alive. So it gets around pretty good. And now we are crossing the Atlantic all the way up to the Caribbean. And of course, we got stuff to do on the ship. So our royal yard, which is way the heck up there, is all made of wood, broke on the foremast. So we've got to repair it. So we did. First, we had it, we had wood. It starts out as a square, and it gets shaved off with a wheel spoke shaver to get to this. And then the harness is put back on. Now you've got a whole yard again, and we are hoisting it up to its top, to the top of the foremast, and putting it right there, that's 100 feet from the deck, that top of that. So you don't go down to the local hardware store and just pick up stuff. You make it. We cross the equator again, and here is King Neptune again and his lovely bride, Queen Nefertiti. And this white skiff here, we picked.
Call it AI.
Yeah, right.
AI generated.
AI generated, yeah. No, this is, these are real people, folks. And we also saw a lot of sea life on this leg of the voyage, porpoises, etc. And now we're, in the Caribbean, so we got to go up, up on a skiff again to take. Here's the profile of the ship. So now you see the fore and aft sails as well as the squares. The reason why this is black here is that we're using diesel fuel for our engine, and in the first part of the voyage, the scraper rings on the pistons had to be replaced because they were leaking fuel, and that's why you've got that diesel black there. That got done early in the voyage. Then we're winding our way through the Caribbean, and this is one of the swimming beaches in the island of Guadeloupe. We went sailing again on this skiff just before it capsized. That's why I'm taking the picture here, and I can tell you that. But they're in like 5 feet of water, so it wasn't a big deal. This place is known to make rum, and they had this awesome waterfall, which John Boy, who is our youngest trainee, he turned 16 on the voyage, will show you his dive. So he'll be maybe competing in the next Summer Games, I'm not sure. But then we go on to the British Virgin Islands and stop at the yacht club there, Foxy's. Maybe some of you have been there. And we are now heading to Bermuda. And we were there for Bermuda Day, when it's a national holiday, obviously. So they had a parade, et cetera, which was great. And they have the world's best miniature golf course. There are 18 holes that are miniature versions of famous holes in Bermuda, 6 of them, 6 from the US and 6 from England. And this guy shot 1 over par, which is amazing. That's Brom. And now we are on our way to Lunenburg. So obviously we had folks coming out to greet us as we're sailing in, and we came in a day early because the weather forecast says it's going to rain for 3 days. So we did that, and we are having our last meal together before we arrive there. This is part of the crew. There are 20 different countries. This is the engineer from Switzerland. He's from the US, another US, Canada, Denmark, US, Texas, Hong Kong, England, New York City, Canada, Virginia, Sweden, and Canada. And I visited this lady this past summer. She and her partner live in Colorado, Ryan Foster. And she now has an unlimited license up to 100 tons, which is pretty darn cool. But she's going to become a veterinarian. Anyway, we are now in port, and it's time to get our fish hook. And this is the creation story for Polynesian cultures, that the Great Spirit created these islands when the Great Spirit dropped a hook into the ocean floor and pulled up land. So every one of us has these. So the captain's giving me mine, and that's Aaron, our first mate. And this is my sea certificate, which describes the places we went to, how many days. It says 405 duty days because it includes the time when you sign the logbook until you finish. So that's in my my home, along with a world map where you got all these other pictures, etc. But I will never, forget all the wonderful sights of the sun rising. We would have a marlin spike on Sundays, people dancing. And I too made a ditty bag. It doesn't look so good here, but this is the end result. If I can get the darn thing to get out of the way. There. And I did it the last 3 days of the voyage. I was going to be on for the whole thing. Those who were on for just one leg, they had to get theirs done. So I kind of procrastinated. But the sunsets were amazing, especially on the Indian Ocean. And in the southern hemisphere, the moon smiles at you. So that, my friends, is the voyage. Now, on your teaser video, there was something about a movie. Well, here it is, folks.
American Oil Company, hard at work.
We're going to
Want to be a part of it?
skip this quickly.
Hello, my name is Adam Ferrari.
There we go.
I'm the CEO.
Okay.
Hey, start cranking.
Everybody who can go up, go up. We're about half and half, men and women. There's 8 professional crew and 35 trainees who range in.
So, Tall Ship Chronicles on YouTube. This is a 6-hour and 9-minute documentary of all the episodes. And that's how I found out about this voyage. All the people from Canada had watched this when it was presented. This was the second world voyage in the late 1990s, and it was 18 months long. Ours was 13. It's amazing. And the narrator, John Younghusband, which is his real name, fell in love with one of the professional crews, and they had a 7-year-long common law marriage. So if you really want to get into the deep dive of what the culture and all this stuff is on this voyage, you can binge watch that or do it in chunks, whatever. So, yeah, movie night. Yeah, you know, you may want to do a series of movie nights since it's 6 hours. But you have to interview with the captain and the office manager to apply for this voyage. And you have to come to Lunenburg and be on the ship, sleep on it several nights, because you want to know what the heck you're getting into. So when they gave me the tour, and I could tell them where I was on the ship. You should be giving the tour. And I said, well, I've seen every inch of it by watching 6 hours of your stuff. So that, my friends, is the world voyage. Are there any questions? Yes.
So, how many storms did you go through?
Well, we had little squalls, yes, because you're busy doing stuff, and that's not, you know, the photos that you're taking at sea, you better be off watch, because if you're on watch, you're doing work. And in the case of squall stuff, it can be all hands on deck. So to answer your question, we had a few light squalls. The worst weather we had was when we were in Cape Town, tied to a pier, and the boat was being pushed into it, or the ship was being pushed into the pier, fortunately. And the wind speeds were 60 knots. And we're in a harbor. So you've got spindrift coming off these waves. So the next day, all hands were brought back to clean the ship of all that salt spray. That was the worst weather we had. On voyage 8, they had a lot of crap. And nothing bad. But again, we were prepared to deal with it, and with the weather forecasting. In our case, we're in the island of Reunion where those great mountains were. We stayed there an extra 6 days to avoid bad weather. Because we're not on a schedule like a regular commercial vessel. So we go when the great spirit or weather people, gods, let us do this. And that's why, and because you got such an inexperienced crew. So, other questions? Yes?
Your favorite island as far as people?
Well,
Arne, can you repeat the question?
oh yeah, the favorite island is, well, yeah, the first one was what bad weather did you have? And now the second question is favorite island in regards to people. Well, that would be a tie. It would be Pitcairn Island and Vanuatu, because we really got to know those folks. And a third would be Palmerston, because we stayed with families there. On other shore leave, you were in hotels or stuff like that. And in Vanuatu, we stayed on the ship, but then we went ashore and spent time with these folks. So we got to know them quite well. And with Pitcairn, as I said, I'm really good friends with my host because we really got to know each other. So it's a unique experience. But I met other people on the voyage when I was in Cape Town. I'm at the top of Table Mountain, and I hear a familiar voice and turn around, and Bill, and it was Bill. Bill Lester, he used to be the president of the Metrodome Sports Facilities Commission. He used to work at the Metro Council, so that's how we know each other. So what are the odds of that? And then I met a woman from Minnesota on a wine tour, and we're now Facebooked. Her name is Sarah Jasenko. She lives in Georgia.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What did it cost?
What did the voyage cost? At $46,000 US for the ship time and approximately $8,000 for shore leave and flights to and from the ship.
How much did it cost to go through the Panama Canal?
I believe it was $10,000. How much was the cost to go to the Panama Canal? That's 10 grand. And you do not miss your opportunity because ships are going through there constantly, of course, and you got to be there. So you normally arrive several days in advance and hang out.
Is that based on ship size?
Yes, yes, because we were in the old canal, which was opened in 1915. The super canal is off to the right, where the super tankers go. So that's why we went through that lock with another vessel, because we could fit.
Depends on cargo too.
Yeah, yeah. Yes.
So you said there's trainees on board, so
Yep.
do they have a certain expectation on sailing experience for the trainees?
They asked if do you have to have a certain sailing experience for the trainees, and the answer is no. I taught the physics of sailing with my watch because they had, the people that had never sailed ever. But the important thing was that you can get along with people. And that leads me to my interview where I've been on other tall ships, and I sailed on the Solanda, a Norwegian sail training vessel from Chicago to Green Bay in 2013. And 3 of us stayed aboard because that was their last port of call for the Tall Ship Festival season, and helped them with deck tours. And then we sang sea shanties for 2 lovely hours and partied with them that last night. This would have been a Saturday night. And then they went off to a bar. Well, one of them named Mike came back. And we said, Mike, why are you here early? And he said, well, my aunt in California died, and I got to go back. But the ship is my family, and the family is my ship. And that is very, very true. And when I told that story to the office manager, my interview with the captain was over the phone. I ran into another person on staff who was listening to my interview, and she says, you nailed that interview with that story, because you really do have to get along with people. They are your family, and they do become your family. As I said, one couple fell in love and got married. And I mentored a young man named Andreas Kocher, lives here in St. Paul, who saw this presentation, and he turned 27 yesterday. And I'm helping him begin his maritime career. He's been working this past summer on lake, ships in the Great Lakes, but he's going to be going to a maritime academy part-time starting in April, and then continuing to work. So I'm helping him out from a financial standpoint, but also mentoring in the sense that I've been where he's been in regards to doing this world voyage. He did World Voyage 8. He met his future wife, Rachel, and they're going to get married in the near future. She's a sailmaker that lives near Halifax, Nova Scotia. But his goal then is to become a mate and eventually a captain. And the money that I'm lending him, he'll pay me back. That's how that will work. But you really have these close relationships because of this experience. Yes.
I have a question. You were a polywog until
Yes.
you crossed the equator.
Yep.
What was your initiation?
Oh, what is the
You didn't really
initiation for
describe
crossing the
describe
equator?
that. Yeah.
Well, the tradition is you really don't divulge that because it's unique to every person and every voyage. But just say there's a lot of fun involved, and it's all done with joy. But there is a baptism, and it's not dangerous, but it's not tidy either. So that's what I'm going to leave you with. And some people get their head shaved, just because, and they request it. Yeah.
More questions?
No more questions? I have one.
Yes.
Oh, wait a second.
What was the most challenging thing for you as an individual for your crew duties?
Okay, what was the most challenging thing as an individual for my crew duties? Going aloft, I have no problems with heights, but when you have to get to the Rattlins, and we're at sea, and in some places it's not an easy way to get to a Rattlin, so you're standing, you know where the pin rail was, where the pins are for those lines I showed you? You're on that before you can get to the Rattlin, and you've got a climbing harness on, but there's no place to clip in. That is not a really comfortable place, but you do it quickly, and then you get on there and everything is fine. My happy place was out at the end of a yard because there was so much stuff around me. Even if my back rope broke, I was not going to go anywhere. I'd be stuck for a while. But that was it. The 8 to 12 watch is what we call the domestics watch because we clean the toilets and the showers and the common spaces the first hour of our watch. And I was on that watch for all but 2 weeks of the voyage. Why? Because I was okay with that. And I got 7 hours of good sleep every night. And I loved it. I turned 65 and 66 on that voyage. I'm going to be 73 in May. But other people got to like their watches and they asked to stay on them. That 2-week period where I wasn't, we rotated. That sucks because your circadian rhythm really depends upon consistency. And that's why folks stayed on a watch that they preferred and they got used to and created a circadian rhythm that worked for them. Yeah.
Yes. Is there any concern for piracy on the high seas?
Yes, there's concern, and that's why we avoid those places. Is there any concern about piracy in the high seas? And yes, and the route that we take avoids those places because we are really defenseless. And there's nothing really to steal, but they don't know that. So, yeah. Yes?
Did you ever get the seasick? Or
did I ever get
people
seasick?
get
On this
seasick?
voyage, the answer is no, but I have been.
But not on this.
But not on this voyage, and the reason why is because I have experience with it and I know what to do before it gets too late. And the best story is I'm on that Norwegian sailing vessel, the Solandet, and we had great wind out of the north, and we come out of Chicago and we sail all the way across Lake Michigan and back in 12 hours approximately. And now we got to go to Green Bay, so we got to take in sail and go north. And now it's bump, 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 bump. And a third of the crew were getting sick. And I'm at the wheel, and now I'm done, but they want me to hang around, and the captain is right here. I threw up in my mouth. But it was a little bit. And I knew it was happening, and I immediately get down. There's a 55-gallon plastic lined drum on the deck that you do what you got to do. And then I come back, and it's nice job. You didn't mess up the deck. But I have, because I knew what was going on, I could react appropriately. And I'd only had an apple for breakfast. Now, if it had been a big meal, heaven forbid, but yeah. And you get, getting back to Jeff Pope, I sailed 3 weeks on the Great Lakes with him on the Sheila Yates. And there was one leg on Lake Huron where there were 5 of us aboard, but only 2 of us were upright, me and Jeff. And that ship had a wheel that was quite tiny, and because we're rocking around, I'm standing in front of the wheel and I'm steering towards the compass, and we're in a channel. And I could figure that out, and since I was experienced enough with how the ship was moving, I didn't get sick, but these other 3 people, they wish they were dead because It was nasty. And you do adapt to this the more sea time you have. And that was my ace in the hole here, because this world voyage, that was my 4th tall ship. Yeah.
What did you take away from the voyage, from the ship, that you still do? Like a habit you do every day, or a way of thinking differently about something?
Well, what did I take away from the voyage that I still do? Well, the one big thing is never give up. You know, in the case of when you're at sea, there's only, use what you got. And if things aren't going smoothly, you keep trying to make it work. Try something different. And that's really helped me. The other, I think, you know, constant has been keeping things neat and organized so you can find stuff, because on the ship there's a place for everything, and everything has a place on the ship. And it really saves you a ton of time. So those are the basic stuff that I learned from that voyage. And then the bondness of friendship, because this is such an intimate experience. It's comparable to people who have served in the military and gone through difficult situations, or any other, you know, unusual stress. Yeah.
So, Arne?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about people who might be interested in doing this? What's the thought process of getting there, and what you would recommend, you know, within 5 minutes?
Yes. She asked, what's the process for a voyage like this? Well, the short answer, unfortunately, this ship is not going to sail again. The captain has dementia. But I can highly recommend the Europa, which is based in the Netherlands. It's an awesome vessel. And so you would, you know, they have every ship's got its own website. And there's a directory of tall ships. So if you just go online and Google tall ship directory, you'll find this stuff. And they will, you know, it's going to be it's not going to be the same experience, because this is not a sail training type of voyage. The Shield or the Picton was the only one that did that in the world. And maybe somebody will do it. But this is a big deal for a professional mariner to basically take this risk to convert this trawler into this 3-masted barque and do what he did. So I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity. But the Europa would be the next best thing, and they have different voyages. They sail to the Antarctic. And you can find a YouTube video of them coming back from several seasons ago, and Vi, that woman from Tonga, she's part of the crew on that video. So that is the advice, is to, you know, find the Europa, EUROPA, and sail on that. Anything else?
I have a question.
Yes.
How big were you allowed, or how big was your duffel bag of gear? What size what was the limit?
How much stuff did I take with me for this voyage? And I guess it would be, the simplest way to describe it is, you know, a tall kitchen garbage bag. 3 of those. Okay. Because that was how I organized my underbunk storage area. And I could find stuff because of that. So, and then you're sailing in the tropics, except for that last leg from Bermuda to Canada. You're crossing the Gulf Stream, and the temperature drops like a rock. And you're wearing shorts and t-shirts, and now you got every layer that you brought with in like 5 minutes. So other than that, you know, but you had to have stuff for that, so I did. And there are other people that joined the ship in Lunenburg, and they left in late February, early March. So they're going through the North Atlantic in the winter. That's not fun. But once they got, through the Gulf Stream, and you move quickly to get there. It's quite pleasant. Any other questions?
Wow. So does this prove that the world is not flat?
Does this prove this world is not flat? The answer is yes.
I was just wondering, because you went everywhere, so. Oh my gosh, Arne, that was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing it. I feel like we just were transported away, and now it's cold and icy out there. So thank you so much.
You're welcome,
you can
welcome.
stay and ask questions.